I threw a temper tantrum and I threw the pot and I said a bad word.
In front of the sisters?
Wait, I thought that I was alone. When I said the bad word, and I pulled back, was mother. And she says, "You sure sound like a sissy." I closed my eyes while I was in attention, and when I reopened my eyes, he was right in front of me. And he takes a rosary out, and then he says, "Mario, the rosary is my favorite prayer." I told my parents, "I'm leaving and I'm going to the Vatican." My mom said, "To do what?" And I said, "I'm going to become a bodyguard." "Of whom?" I said, "Of the Pope."
We're here today, Beyonce, with Mario Enzler, and he is a man of many accomplishments. He's an investment banker, part of the Heritage Foundation, except I think his most exciting title is former Swiss Guard under St. John Paul II.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure being here.
Tell me, Mario, a little bit about your background, both spiritually and personally, growing up.
I'm a Swiss citizen that was born in Italy because in the northern part of Italy, in a town called Bergamo, which is right outside of Milano, okay, in the industrial area of northern Italy. And the reason why I was born there is because my dad was a Swiss citizen and he had been transferred to work in Milano. And then, he fell in love with a woman there and then they got married and there I come, right? So
Pretty Italian.
you got it. And I kept the Swiss citizenship until I finished the university and I had to fulfill my military obligation. And I had Italian citizenship being born in Italy and a Swiss citizenship because of my dad. And so to fulfill the military obligation, I had to choose either in Switzerland or in Italy. And in Switzerland was only 17 weeks boot camps versus Italy 54 weeks boot camps. And so I chose to fulfill the Swiss military obligation. I lost the Italian citizenship. I went in the Swiss Alps. I served for 17 weeks. And while I was there, I was asked to join the Pontifical Swiss Guard. And at first I said, "No, thank you. I don't see myself dressed up as a clown, standing still all the time, on the cobblestone." But they said, "Mario, when you become a Swiss Guard, you acquire a noble title." And I said, "Really? Am I going to become Sir Mario Enzler or Prince?" And they said, "No, not really. You're going to become three Latin words: Defensores Libertatis Ecclesiae, protectors of the church's freedom." And so when they said that, that caught my attention because I said, who's trying to steal the church's freedom and why? And so when I finished the 17 weeks, I went back to Bergamo and I told my parents, "I'm leaving and I'm going to the Vatican." And my mom said, "To do what?" And I said, "I'm going to become a bodyguard." "A bodyguard? Of whom?" I said, "Of the Pope." And my mom said, "Really?"
What qualifications had to be in place to become a Swiss Guard?
You have to fulfill the military obligation, the 17 weeks.
Yes.
And then they do the usual background check. You have to be a practicing Catholic. You have to have no criminal records, right? So not a DUI or anything. And you have to commit for a minimum of 2 years.
2 years, and you have to be a Swiss citizen.
You have to be a Swiss citizen.
So an Italian or an American cannot apply to be a Swiss Guard. And just for people who don't know, Swiss Guard are the guards sometimes dressed in the colorful uniform, most times, but there's one outfit they wear that's not colorful.
Correct. So, and most of the time, the guards are also wearing just a dark suit. Yes. And they're standing next to the Holy Father. So the people around the Pope, correct.
Is it the Pope only or the Vatican as well?
Just the Pope.
Just the Pope. So they are basically the army for the Pope.
Correct.
Can you give us a little, because for probably half the people that watch my show aren't Catholic, can you give us a little bit of history as to how the Swiss Guards came to protect the Pope?
Yes. So the Swiss Guards arrived at the beginning of the 16th century. To be precise, on January 22nd, 1506. Why? Well, if you are an historian or if you love beauty and art, Well, that's the time where they were building St. Peter, where Michelangelo, Raffaello, people know this name, right? They were engaged by the Pope to paint the Sistine Chapel. Maderno, Bernini were the architect, okay? So the Pope at that time was Julius II. But at that time in Germany, there was a lot of mess going around. The Pope was concerned about the Landsknecht, the barbarian that they had said, we are going to leave Germany, we're going to go down and we're going to take possessions of the wealth of the church and blah, blah, blah. And he didn't have anybody to protect him. He didn't have a army, he didn't have a bodyguard. Who was kind of in charge, and I do the same to protect him, were the Italians. And I love the Italians, but the Pope felt, okay, I got to get a little serious here, okay? And so there was a Swiss priest in 1505 that worked at the Vatican. And so he confided to the Holy Father at that time that in Switzerland, a lot of the men were mercenaries and they were extremely faithful and loyal, strong, great fighter, but they needed to be paid in order for them to leave Switzerland and go and protect anybody that was willing to pay and in need of protection. And as a matter of fact, some Swiss were already in Italy, below Rome, in the Naples area, in the Bourbon family, protecting people down there. And so the Holy Father thought, you know what? I think it's money good spent to engage somebody. And so he cut a deal, and 150 men left Switzerland and walked all the way down along the Via Francigena, which basically is along the Tirreno Sea, coming down, then if people are listening, coming down from Firenze, you come down from that area, okay? And on January 22nd, 1506, Pope Julius II welcomed them, and the guards, they've been there since then. Every pope renewed them, keeps them, and Pope Leo did the same. Every pope could say, I don't want the Swiss anymore. I want the Belgium. Never happened. And so the Swiss Guard are the oldest continue active army in the world.
Have they ever had to actually go to war on behalf of the Pope?
They did not go into war, but in 15...
Or battle,
battle, yes. So in 1527, sack of Rome, the Landsknecht, they invade Rome, and there were 147. There was 147 guards, including the commander, that died to protect the Pope that had changed at that time and was Clement VII. And Clement VII, was able to escape. He went into Castel Sant'Angelo, and then from there he went to France, right? So they never really engaged in a battle, but they gave their life to protect the life of the Holy Father. Now, did I ever had to do anything like this? Certainly not. But I did.
Any hairy situations?
The worst physical things that I had to face, one was during an audience that a gentleman pulled out a syringe.
Oh, no.
Right, and they wanted to stop, but we saw that and we grabbed it. But I was not there when he was shot in 1981. I arrived later. But I believe it or not, as bodyguards, we are always very careful. But for us, it's the main challenge for us is that everybody wants to touch the Pope, right? And it's a little, sometimes it's a little harmful because people from the back, they come.
Yeah, no, it's a lot.
It's a lot. And, they can scratch his face. Many people, they want to, maybe they want to pull a button out of his cassocks. And it's leave him alone. He's going to try to touch as many people as he can, right? So sometime when you walk next to the Holy Father, you have all of these hands and you have to constantly push them down. And I always joke here into the United States, I have several friends of mine that they work in the Secret Service, right? And I always say, guys, you have an easiest job than the Swiss Guards because you can tell your guy, the President of the United States, you're not going there. We're going to shut down the event and blah, blah, blah. We cannot do that with the Holy Father.
That's what he wants.
Yes, he wants to go right in the heat of
Like
the
a mosh
crowd.
pit, mosh pit
Yes,
with the Pope.
you got it. So it's quite an experience, right? And yeah,
Do the Swiss guards carry weapons?
yes.
Okay, because there's this misconception that they are only ceremonial and they don't have weapons and they're not trained. But I know, and you know, that they are.
Yes, very. Everybody's armed and very well trained. It's a secret. It's a security serious service. They're not there just as a puppet for pictures.
You can't make them laugh.
Correct. The guy that is what is called the sentinel, the honor guard, with the alabar, he doesn't carry a weapon because the other guy has the weapon, right? So there are certain services that it's more symbolic, right? But obviously you have to have weapon. I never had to take it out, right? I don't think that any story, maybe I don't know all of it, but I think it's rare that you get to a point where you have to take the weapon out of your holster. Then there is an Italian public security called Gendarmeria, and they are in charge of protecting the Vatican state. But the Swiss guards, they protect the Pope, and when there isn't a Pope, like happened recently, sede vacante, they are in charge of protecting the College of Cardinals during the conclave, okay? But then as soon as the Pope comes out, then the guards, they protect the Pope.
Okay, so you come home and you tell
I
your
tell
mom.
my mom, and my mom kind of, said, really, right? And so when I went down, originally I thought, I'm going to be in Rome. I'm going to be so cool. I'm going to get so many dates because of the uniform. I'm going to have the beautiful life, right? And then within 3 weeks of service, I was in a room.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, absolutely.
Was there any special training to be a Swiss?
Yes. So when you get down, you do a 4 weeks training, okay, which is from defense, self-defense, strategic initiatives, crisis management, all of those things. At the end of the 4 weeks, you have to pass an exams, and if you succeed, then you get enrolled officially. You become a soldier, right? And while I was active, okay, for the first 3 weeks, I only saw the Only Father from afar, right? But then one day I was in a room in the Apostolic Palace, and I was notified that His Holiness was going to walk by. And so there's a protocol, close the door, make sure that nobody shows up, the typical things, right? And when the Only Father entered the room, I was wearing the colorful uniform, right? I went in attention, and as a soldier, you don't talk, right? You know that you go in attention, you make sure that nothing happens, and nothing happens, okay? And then the Only Father stopped and came in right in front of me, and he said to me, "You must be a new one." That's how Pope John Paul II spoke.
So it was Pope John Paul II.
Yes, yes. And he says, "You must be a new one." And when he said that, I came out of attention, because that for me is I can now talk, right? And shook his hand. We talked for a moment. And then when I tried to get my hand back, he didn't let go. And I found it kind of awkward, no? But, it happened so fast. And then all of a sudden, he sandwiched my hand in between his hands. And then looking at me, he said, "Well, Mario, thank you for coming to serve who serves."
You served under Pope John Paul. Saint,
Pope John Paul II.
you served under Saint Pope John Paul II. That's pretty special.
And that day, I realized, like you just said, that that man was special. I don't know what, but that day I said to myself, whatever this man has, I wanted it. I don't know what it is, but I definitely have to pay attention to what he says, the posture, how he engages with people, and that's what I did. And I fell madly in love with him because he was a saint on earth.
He was also a superstar, I feel like, for a pope.
Yeah, superstar.
Were you a practicing Catholic?
I was, but cradle Catholic, like in Italy, going to Sunday Mass, right? I didn't, if my mom will say, "Oh, we have to do night prayer and say the rosary," I will do that, but I will never do that on my own, right?
Or maybe did you connect more with it after meeting him this first time?
Yes. After meeting him first times, I started, because of the service, attending many masses where he was the main celebrant, right? And so to see him at the altar, saying the consecration words, right? It was clear to me that that was becoming the body, soul, and divinity, right? It was clear that he had a charisma, he had I'm going to use the word power, he had a glow on it, right? And to me, it was, whoa, this is huge. This man is cool, right? And I started praying. I started paying attention to mass. I started going to mass even when I was not on duty, for example. You are in Rome, there are churches everywhere, even though you don't have a lot of free time, but I will go there. And then talking about my devotion to Mary, John Paul II had a devotion to Mary. He had, people don't know, but if you go in St. Peter, and you are in the middle of St. Peter, right in front of the obelisk, and you're looking at the basilica, on the right side, there is the Apostolic Palace, right, where the third floor is where it comes out. Right there, there is a mosaic of Mary with the logo of John Paul II, Totus Tuus. That was put there after the attentat homicide on May 13, 1981, because John Paul II said that when he got shot 3 times and he fell back into the jeep in the arm of one of the Swiss guard, he saw Mary on the facade of the church, of the Apostolic Palace. And so after 1 year, he was in the hospital and blah, 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 he commissioned to put in that spot the face of Mary because he saw it there.
Wasn't it on the feast day of Our Lady of Fatima?
Yes, that's when he got shot.
Yeah, and I think he had a big devotion to her.
Yes, already, right?
And then the bullet went.
He put it in the crown
Of Our Lady
of Our Lady in Fatima.
In Fatima, yeah, that's a beautiful story.
So he had a devotion to Mary. And one day, again, I was in the Apostolic Palace, I was hot, I was tired, and I was hoping that the only Father, I knew that he was going to walk by, and I was hoping that he will stop and maybe exchange few words. I'm a soldier. We are not going to talk about Christology, right? We're going to talk about the weather, the food, something simple, right?
Yes.
And so I go into an attention, and he walks by, and he didn't stop. And I felt so sad because, I was alone. And I closed my eyes while I was in attention. And when I reopened my eyes, he was right in front of me. And I had not heard the steps of him coming. So I was surprised, right? And so I'm 6'2", and the only Father was probably 5'10", maybe 5'10 and a half. And so he was looking at me in my eyes, and I'm in attention, and he's not talking, so I cannot come out of attention. And then all of a sudden, I see that he puts his hands in his pocket of the cassock, right? And he takes a rosary out. And he holds the rosary in his hands, and he puts it in front of my face. And then he says, Mario. And when he said that, I came out of the attention. The rosary is my favorite prayer. Marvelous in its simplicity and profundity. Take my beads. So I went like this, and he put his rosary beads in my hands. And then he said, and make them, being the beads, your most powerful weapon. I closed my hand. He took few steps, then he stopped, turned, and said, welcome to adulthood. Always call on Mary, because she will turn you from timid into daring. Since that day, I always carry a rosary in my pocket, because this is what every man should do.
Is that the one?
No, this is another
Okay.
one. The one that he gave me
Is in a case.
is in my nightstand.
Okay, I love it.
But I carry a rosary in my pocket because
The devil doesn't like the rosary.
you got it. You got it.
Satan does not like rosaries. Satan does not like the Virgin. And if you have a rosary, it's the most powerful protection against
And
evil.
he prayed the rosary. His successor, Pope Benedict, prayed the rosary. Even Pope Francis prayed the rosary. Pope Leo is devout to Mary as well. The rosary, it's important, right? And we should be unified asking Mary's intercession. And that's why I carry the rosary. Do I say rosary every day? I try.
I do too.
Sometimes maybe I try before I fall asleep, and then I don't finish the
asleep. I
rosary.
know, me
But
too.
Mary finishes the rosary. I know for sure that if we start a rosary and we don't finish it, she finishes it for us.
I do one about 4 times a week, sometimes every day.
And so, as a soldier, I received this conversion in my heart. And now, as a father and as a grandfather, I try to pass this, and I did with my wife, to the children and the grandchildren and in the work environment and everywhere I can, because we have to pray, and we have to ask the saints for the intercessions, and they they listens to us. And what an amazing chance we have.
Those stories are wonderful. Do you have any more stories about
Oh yeah.
Saint John Paul II?
Well, he was, how can I say, since we talked about the spirituality, he was a man of prayer, right? And often in the afternoon, he will go, you've been to Rome, you know what I'm talking about. But when you look at the Apostolic Palace, there is the floor, the third floor, with the window where the Pope comes out for the Angelus, right? Above that, where the roof is, there is a garden, Giardino Pensile, right? Where John Paul II and even Ratzinger, Francis didn't live there. Leo is going back there, so I think he will use it. John Paul II will go up there every afternoon for a little walk, because, as a pope, is not that, oh, I'm going to go to Piazza Navona. Doesn't work like that.
Yeah, let me take a little stroll.
Yeah, I'm going to take a stroll and a
Not-
gelato in
yeah,
Piazza Navona. Doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So when the Pope went up to take a walk there, he will always wear, and this will make you laugh, a black cape and a black Irish hat. Because if you are a tourist and you are on the cupola and you look down, you can see that Giardino.
Yeah.
And if he was walking with a white, well, you will have all of the people say, "El Papa, el Papa." And so he will camouflage his white with that. But when he was up there, one of the guards will go up there, for security. Where he goes, we go, right?
Sure.
And several times when I had the honor to be up there, I will nod, and you don't talk, you stay on the side, right? I will see him, walking around 9 times out of 10 with the rosary in his hands. And then all of a sudden, boom, fall on his knees and stay there and making noise, like how his knees are handling that.
I know, and he wasn't that young.
Exactly. And stay there maybe for a couple of minutes, right? And then he will pull one knee up and push himself up and walk around. So this scene that I'm sharing with you always made me think of the red phone that the president of Russia had to speak. I always thought, when the Pope is doing that, he's talking directly to God. That's what I always thought. I said, why is he doing that, right? He doesn't need to do, nobody's here, there are no photographers. I always thought it's because God pushed him down, and so he's talking to God or to Mary, right? So that for me was profound, right? Or another time, we were in Castel Gandolfo, which is where Pope Leo just went for a few weeks to rest. And when the Pope went there, a small group of us will go with him, right? And because he was in vacation, there was not a lot of ceremonial, right? Most of the time, we didn't wear the uniform. We were just, jeans and polo shirts, right? And we will go for walks, okay? So one day, I was in charge. I was the team leader. And so I went up into the apartment, and when I started walking down this hallway, corridoio, right, I had to go to the end, because that's where the living room is. That's where the coffee table that we put those things, right? And to go down there, I had to pass the chapel, where we will go to mass in the morning with him. So I knew exactly what's behind every door. So when I arrived at the height of the chapel, almost in a mechanical way, I stopped with this bag in my hands, and I looked into the chapel because I wanted to bow, to the Blessed Sacrament on the tabernacle.
Of course.
And John Paul II was in the chapel. And he was kneeling on the floor, and with his hands, he was grabbing the altar, right? And his forehead was resting in between his hands on the altar. And I'm thinking, what's going on, right? And so I took a step inside the chapel, because I thought maybe they're doing pictures or a documentary and I wasn't informed. There was nobody. I went down to the loom, left the bag, and when I walked back, I didn't stop and I didn't look inside. 5 hours later, so post dinner, we received notification that His Holiness wants to go for a walk, okay, in the gardens, right? And so at that time, we were supposed to go on the walk with him, right? And so because I was the senior guy, so I organized four of us, and then the only father walks, who was his secretary also, and four guards. And, we are inside the Vatican garden, big walls, the Italian polizia all around outside. It's safe, right?
Yeah.
But we go with him, right? And I was team leader, which means I was ahead of him, okay? So one of the two in the front. And somehow, I walk and I keep thinking, okay, should I go left? Should I go right? So I kept going. And we got to, there was a little pond, okay? And I thought, I think he stopped here the last time I was on duty. And so I slowed down, and sure enough, His Holiness got out of the security formation and went to the pond to look at the flowers, those white flowers with the leaves, right? And some of them
Water
were,
lilies.
yeah, right, some of those fishes, right? Instead of going into the middle, he came in my direction. And the other three guards, they realized that he was coming to me. And so they stayed where they were because they thought the only father has to say something to Mario. So let's wait for Mario to tell us what to do. So he comes. Now, I don't wear a uniform, so I don't have to do the military salute. So I'm waiting for him to say whatever he has to say. It was obvious in his posture, right? So when he arrived in front of me, I had jeans, my head's down, and he's not talking. And I'm thinking, okay. And then all of a sudden, he grabs my left wrist where I wear my watch, okay? And he pulls me. And so I go down. I was just not expecting that, right? So when he pulled me down, I went with my head very close to his face and I turned because I thought he wants to whisper something.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, he did. And he said, Mario, why don't you join me next time? And then he let go of my wrist. And I'm thinking, what is he talking about? And then he came back and we started walking and he came to me. He was referring to my noticing him 5 hours prior in the chapel. And that threw me off balance because I thought, how the heck does he know? He didn't turn around. I don't wear Chanel number 5 so that, somebody can recognize my smell. How did he know that I saw that and I felt, the bone marrow, right? So that walk, the rest of the walk, my brain was spinning, right? And then, sure enough, 2 days later, I ended up joining him in the chapel because they had said that he was doing a small adoration, 30 minutes, and I went. And this is to tell you who I was dealing with: a man of prayer, a man with special gifts, such that he will care about a young soldier to
That's
tell
incredible.
him,
That's
join
incredible.
me in prayer. Unheard of, right? Unheard of.
He's like the real deal. Like he's what you think of like how a holy man should live.
Yes. And he did that for 27 years, right? Until the end of his life when God called him in 2005, right?
Tell us the story about the girl who was deaf and mute.
Yes. So every Wednesday, popes do what is called the general audience. So I was at the gate allowing people to come in. And for people that are listening to us, if they've been to an audience, they know that you have to have a ticket, right? And the ticket is just a color that basically puts you in a specific area, either in the hallway or in the square, right? So I am there, I'm looking at all the people and, whatever. And all of a sudden, this lady comes and she has something in her hands. And next to her, there was a girl, right? Probably 10, 11 years old. And she says, Scusa in Italiano, I'll tell you in English. She says, sorry, my daughter did this drawing. Would it be possible to give it to His Holiness? That's normal questions, right? People do that all the time. to guards. Can you give this to the only father? Never cash. I'm joking. But, you know, there was a drawing, okay? And so I said, sure. And so I take the drawing and I don't talk to the girl. I talk to the mom. They move away and I put the drawing in my pocket. My duty that day at the certain point was to leave that position and to go behind the building where the only father was arriving with the car for entering the hall and start the audience, right? So I go around, I'm now there, I wait, the only father comes, I go in attention, he comes out of the car and he starts walking into the aula, Paolo says, to the hallway. I remembered about the drawing, right? And so his secretary, Monsignor Givic, today Cardinal Givic, stayed behind for a moment. And so I took it out of my pocket and I said to him, Monsignore, una bambina, a girl, gave this drawing to me for the only father. And he took it. I don't even remember if he said thank you, but he just took it and put it, you know, he carries the folders with all the speeches, he put it in his hand. So my service ended there. Then I went back to the barracks. I didn't stay for the audience. And then I rested and then I went to lunch because I had to start in the afternoon. While I was having lunch, the guards that stayed, sorry that it's a long story, but you need the details. The guards that stayed after, you know, during the audience until the only father left, they were sharing an anecdote that caused a little panic, such as the only father that was, as you know, maybe people know that are listening, he comes down and he does the, you know, he goes and gets close to the pilgrims, right? First in front and then he walks up and then he comes down and there are the barriers there and people, you know, pile up
Yes,
and
sure,
becomes
sure,
a
sure.
wall, right? The guard said that he was walking up the central aisle and all of a sudden he stopped and he walked back. For security purpose, that's very dangerous because you never clear the back. You always clear the front. The back, I don't care what's in the back, sure, right? We passed, right? So for the guards, that was a moment of what is he doing? Where is he going? And they said that they were sharing that he went back almost 5 meters, so 15 feet, and he reached out with his hands to a little girl that was barely above the barrier with her face. And he blessed her mouth and her ear. And then he walked away. Well, we didn't know at that time, we learned later, that that was the girl that gave me the drawing, that her mom gave me the drawing, and that girl was mute and deaf. And when he blessed her mouth and her ears, she started talking and hearing.
So Pope John Paul II, now Saint John Paul II, performed the miracle while he was alive and Pope.
Yes.
That's like so beautiful.
Yes. How did he know about the girl, right? How
It's God.
God. I think
It's
that,
Jesus.
you know, we were, you know, guards leader, you know, we were talking about that and we were saying it maybe there was a spotlight, you know, on
Yeah.
the girl.
God was like, here she is.
And he went back and maybe all of that initiated with a little drawing given to me that I gave it to Givic. That was a tie, right? Like maybe a
Full
tape.
circle, yeah.
Correct. And the first circle closed when he blessed.
That's beautiful.
So
I love that
I have
story.
gazillions of stories, but this is to prove that you are correct. He was already a saint on earth.
Yes, he really was. I've never heard that story. It seems like he's a man of few words, but if you had to like describe his personality to people, well, how would you describe it?
He was definitely an introvert,
Yes.
but at the same time, he had an effort, okay, to reach out to people and never deny a smile, a caress, a shake, all right? And you saw that it was coming kind of naturally, but he had to put an effort into it.
Oh, I see.
You know what
Okay,
I'm saying?
yeah.
But at the same time, never forget that growing up, he was an actor. He did a lot of theater.
I forgot about that.
Yes. So he also knew where the camera was. But
I love this.
if I can describe it, I will say that. So, somebody that, an intellectual all the way through, always you will see, as we will alone inside the Apostolic Palace, always immersed in thoughts, right? And
He basically did the luminous mysteries.
yes, and all of the encyclicals that he wrote and things like that, right? He was always immersed in thoughts, but at the same time, he will walk by, not all the time, but I would say at least two-thirds. He will notice us, and he will take 10 seconds just to come and say, "How are you?"
That's so
That's
sweet.
so sweet.
That's so very
That's
sweet.
so very sweet. How many times we, as business owners or business executives, we walk by in our buildings, in our offices, and we don't even say hello to a cleaning lady or to a security person. He knew that we were there. He knew that we are made in the image of God. And so he always made sure, most of the time, but the effort was clear, to maybe just say hi. And that gives you so much joy, because you've been maybe in the Apostolic Palace for 9 hours, you're exhausted, you're on your feet, right? And then all of a sudden he comes and your feet don't ache anymore. The exhaustion goes away because you talked for 10 seconds.
Mario, I have to ask you, I can't stand to be in Rome in July. How were you ever in those uniforms in the sweltering heat?
So John Paul II told one time that suffering is redemptive. And to answer your question, I'm going to tell you this anecdote. When John Paul II went to the hospital in 1991 because he had a benign cancer, okay? So he went to the hospital, they removed the benign cancer, and then he came back, okay? He stayed in the hospital 6 days, okay? When he came
You mean a
back,
benign tumor?
a benign tumor.
Yeah, because benign and cancer don't.
Sorry, benign tumor.
Yes, 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 yes.
Which was like an apricot size.
Yeah, yeah,
okay?
sure.
So benign tumor.
Yes.
Correct. And so when they took him out of his intestine, then when he came back, that day in my service, I was in the courtyard called San Damaso, waiting for him to arrive. When he arrives, I go in my attention, the butler gets out, opens the door of the car, and His Holiness, look pale, like everybody after surgery, after a week in the hospital, you look pale, you lose weight. So he put his foot out, put his second foot out, he grabs the chassis of the Mercedes, he pulls himself out, but he lost the balance. And rather than falling back into the car, he took a step toward the back, the rear, and so he leaned, against the side of the car.
Sure.
But his left hand remained in the opening of the door, right? And the butler didn't see that.
Oh,
And so the butler
gosh.
closed the door of the Mercedes, and finger 5, 4, and 3 got closed into the.
Oh, I can't imagine the pain.
Exactly. In front of me, His Holiness made a little, oh! The butler reopened immediately the door. He took it out, okay? And he didn't yell or scream or swear or punch the butler. He said that suffering is redemptive. And we all have to understand that there is a higher gospel, which is the gospel of suffering, through which we can redeem the church. So my answer to you is, every time in July and in August, where in Rome it's humid, like
it's
Florida, right?
Oh,
I would stand Sant'Uffizio the Gate or l'Arco delle Campane in St. Peter, feeling the sweat going down, on my back, and I will offer it up, right? I would be hydrated, drink a lot, but sometimes was very uncomfortable, right? But I offer it up, and you're engaging with people and so on and so forth, and you move, and all of a sudden you feel that you are wet, and it's painful, right? But for us, it was a way to sacrifice and to offer up something, like an almsgiving, so to speak. So that what I did, and that what still today the guards do, because the uniform is the same since 520 years. The uniform has been the same. and the humidity is brutal, and there are no alternatives, right? That's how it is. So you offer it up.
Did Pope John Paul II have any favorites, like restaurants, food, people, music, other than his pumas?
Well, John Paul II, obviously, he never left. He left in incognitus several times to go ski, but not to go to food, right? So he was very tight with Polish traditions, okay? So kielbasa, so Polish food was always present, okay? Um, Many times pilgrims will come and bring desserts, which, please forgive me for any Polish people, but I didn't really like it. They have a lot of ricotta inside, very rich. You take a bite, takes you 10 minutes to swallow them, right? A lot of alcohol, śliwowica, all of these drinks, right? But, I've witnessed him. He was a simple man, right? So my answer to you will be, he never asked us, can you go and get me a burger or a pizza, right?
Yeah.
He had, every pope did, not Francis, but Benedict did, and Pope Leo have. He has, John Paul II had nuns. He had 5 nuns that lived with him, and one of them was the chef, and so she was the one cooking.
There was not like a favorite meal he asked for?
No, not that
Just Polish food.
yeah, most of the time was Polish food, yes.
That's interesting. Living in Italy, still asking for Polish food.
But
you
I
like
will
what
get-
you like. You could take the boy out of Poland,
I
but
was
you
gonna
can't
s-
take the Poland out of the
You got-
boy.
I would say maybe the quality of the food because of Italian, I'm not an expert, but for sure the sisters, they shopped inside the Vatican, so they were maybe forced to create Polish food with Italian ingredients. So I don't know.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a few like concluding questions. Who's your favorite saint?
Well,
I think I know the answer to this.
I would say obviously St. Pope John Paul II, right? And I share many stories, and one of the reasons why I was blessed to meet you and to be here today is because I think I owe him to share stories.
I love it. By the
Because
way,
our children, they don't know him, right? And it's the past May 18 was his 20th anniversary of his death, right?
are we that old?
We are
Oh.
that old, I'm sorry. So I think that when I go around, I don't have to talk about his theology or his, I just talk about the man. And I always encourage people, hey, you have questions? I think don't look at AI, but Google, I think that John Paul II had an answer to whichever questions, which is connected with what the Catholic Church and the magisterium will tell you. There might be a video, there might be a talk. Look at him, look at that, find it, right? And a lot of the youngster, right, that people that are in college right now, they were, 2 years old when he passed away. Then Benedict, they were Toledo, and so they grew up with Francis, right? And so they didn't really have an understanding of the importance and the legacy that John Paul II left, right? So he's definitely my favorite saint. Another saint that I constantly pray to is Mother Teresa. I had the honor.
You have a funny Mother Teresa story. You better tell us the funny Mother Teresa story.
So
I think she referred to you as the wimp.
yes, she called me a sissy, to be precise.
Sissy wimp, sorry.
Sissy wimp. So Mother Teresa, I met her because the Missionary of Charities, they run like a soup kitchen, which is right on the edge of the Vatican, right? And believe it or not, as the consequence of some of your, let's say like this, misbehave, you get social services that you have to deliver, right? Let's say you break the curfew, you're supposed to be back into the barracks by midnight, you come back at 2.
What did you do?
Well, maybe you're outside having a beer and then all of a sudden oh, I gotta go, and you're not a Cinderella. Okay, so you get back late.
Okay.
You get reported. Okay, and then the sergeant in charge of the services says, oh, Mario, you came back 2 hours late, 2 hours of service.
Okay, got it.
So the 2 hours of service was with the sisters. So we will go into the soup kitchen to serve the food, sometime to clean. And so maybe you can get it now. I was in the kitchen few times. And I met mothers there, right? And the story that I'm about to say happened exactly as a consequence of one of my infractions, okay? And when I arrived there and I present myself and I said, I'm here. I gotta give you 3 hours, sisters. And they told me to go and serve the food. And I said, I don't want it. Can I be in the kitchen? I'll wash pot. And they said, okay. And so I went into the kitchen and to wash the pot. And they had, I don't know if you're familiar, but they had this big industrial sink, which is 3 holes, right? Because you wash in once, you rinse in the others, and then you sanitize, right? And so I was there, and all of a sudden, I was washing these huge pots, okay, with this, the little sponge, and I'm trying to clean, and it wasn't coming, right? And so I threw a temper tantrum, and I threw the pot into the sink, and the water with the soap came down, got my jeans, my shoes wet, and I said a bad word.
In front of the sisters?
Wait, I thought that I was alone.
Oh.
The problem is I was not, because next to me, there was a sister that had arrived with a cart full of dirty dishes, and she was unloading them for me to clean and put into this dishwasher, right? Well, when I said the bad word, and I pulled back, I noticed the sisters, and then when I turned, it was Mother. And Mother looks at me and she says in Italiano, but I'll say in English, wow, you sure sound like a sissy. And when she said that, I said to myself, what? And I wanted to, as a guy, I wanted to talk back, but she left, right? And I spent few months thinking, next time I see Mother, I'm going to tell her I'm not a sissy, I'm a man, right? So here we are, few months later, and she's coming into the Apostolic Palace for an audience with the Holy Father. And when she arrives, she goes in and then she comes out, and she was with few other sisters, okay? And I was willing to, to try to, single her out so that I could talk, but I wasn't able to do that because she was not able to leave the little group. But she looked at me, and you know how the missionary of charities are, they have this habit. Sure. And she had a little, she had the veil down, and she had a miraculous medal that she was pinned in the veil, right? And so rather than me talking, the mother, took that medal out of that pin, and she gave it to me. And, I'm thinking, what's going on? I'm supposed to tell you that I'm a man, and now she's giving me a medal, and I wasn't able to say anything, and then she left. And now here I am with a medal, and I still didn't tell her that I'm a man, so I got a little frustrated, right? And so I spent few more months thinking, next time I see her, I have to tell her. Well, within these months, I lost the medals.
Oh, no.
Yes? So here we go again. We are in the Apostolic Palace. The mother comes again with a group of sisters. This time I'm determined. I need to talk. I'm going to have to tell her. She doesn't remember who I am. I don't care. I will tell her. And so she comes out to synthesize the story. She comes out. Now I'm ready. She's all of a sudden, she's by herself. So I move forward and I'm about to say something. And Mother looks at me. And so it's like no words would come out of my mouth. Okay. And so I see her again touching her veil, and all of a sudden she comes out with a new medal, right? She looks at me and she says, this time, don't lose it, sissy. And she walked away.
I love it.
That's a saint. How did she know that I had lost the medal?
These people are
She
blessed and
remembered
holy.
me, and she still called me sissy. So I was never able to tell her that I'm not a sissy.
I love it. I love this
And-
little, she's what,
yes.
3 feet
Yeah,
tall, calling
yeah.
you a sissy?
What an amazing woman.
Yeah, oh yeah,
What an
she's,
amazing woman.
there's a reason why she's a saint.
Yes. So those are the two saints that, and then the third one that I really love and I'm very, very happy is blessed soon to be Saint Pier Giorgio Frassati. Okay. Being grown up in Italy, being an outdoor guy, for us, Pier Giorgio Frassati was always a referral, right? And I was in service as a Swiss Guard when he was beatified by John Paul II. And here is a little secret for the few people that are listening to us. I used to date Pier Giorgio Frassati's niece
Oh,
when I was a Swiss Guard.
I love it.
And then, and now I, happily married 33 years. But anyway, so I'm so happy that Pope Leo will canonize him with Carlo Acutis,
I
right?
love that.
So
I'll be there.
yes, you'll be
I'll be
there.
there for
Beautiful.
the
And Pier Giorgio
canonization.
Frassati is at the third saint. So John Paul II, Mother Teresa, and Pier Giorgio Frassati. I will call them contemporary saints, really down on earth. They are my to go when I need help to intercede to our Father.
I love it. Thank you so much, Mario, for joining us.
Thank
It
you
was really
for
a
having me.
special treat to hear all of your stories.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.